Alright, so a couple of things before we get started. First things first, there's probably going to be a bit of background noise in this video. I recently moved into a new place and I haven't got everything situated and it's a little bit echoey. I tried to do the best I can to help with the echoing, but sadly I cannot make it all go away until I get my room completely set up. Second thing is that I do have dogs, and one of my dogs is very attached to their owner, which is not me. It is actually somebody else. So, for the meantime, sadly you might have to hear my dog crying every once in a while in the background. He's calmed down a bit, but who knows. Moving on to the second thing, Minecraft is coming, but I'm gonna be honest, I have been extremely lazy in editing it. I have about 8 maybe hours into the game on one build, and honestly I'm not sure how I'm gonna cut it up yet. I've had some ideas, some I tossed in the trash, but for now, that's really all that's happening. It's just been a really busy, crazy week. With that being said, let's get into the video. So the first game I played is called Depths of Madness, and its description says that it is an atmospheric underwater horror game and asks if we can evade and survive. When reading a bit further into it, it states that Cthulhu is the entity involved and that our goal is to collect key cards in an underwater facility. This game had a few good reviews, however it definitely had its fair share of bad reviews. One stated that they fell out of the world once loaded in. Some said that it wasn't really scary, and overall it seemed a lot of people were experiencing bugs and glitches. So I decided to download and play it to see for myself. When I first started the game, everything seemed decent. The animations were smooth and rolled together really well, and when I pressed play, a guide to the controls were brought up, and the animations again were well put together, and I found it quite endearing. When I first loaded into the game, the mouse sensitivity was extremely low by default. Luckily, this is fixable, but it was a little bit annoying to deal with. When I went in to change my settings, when I pressed escape, instead of the settings being in the middle, they were slightly off and to the side. It was tilted and on the left side of the screen, as if it was a hologram from the thing on the arm that reminds me of a Pip-Boy. Walking was extremely slow, and you slid after taking your hand off of the controls. Multiple times throughout the video, I was able to see through the cracks, or if I was pushing myself into the wall, I could see through it. There is no inventory system, so while traveling through the facility, areas that are blocked off need a specific color keycard. The keycards are everywhere and extremely small, and it makes it a bit difficult to keep track of what colors you have on your person. Without some kind of inventory, it got difficult to figure out what color keys I had, and it just got really confusing. There were lockers in every room, but if you hid in them, you couldn't see outside. So there was a chance that you would get captured because you didn't know if Cthulhu was waiting for you outside the locker. When Cthulhu first spawned in, I waited around to see what the death animation looked like, but there was no animation. He would just walk towards you, really slowly, then it faded into a black screen. Also, this guy does not look like Cthulhu to me. Maybe it's not meant to be him, or maybe the game is inspired by the universe. But in my eyes, I was thinking I was going to see Cthulhu, and that Cthulhu was the creature in the facility. I've also always thought that Cthulhu was really, massive, but I don't know. I don't know much about the Cthulhu universe. Honestly, there isn't much in this game that I liked. Everything was buggy, and I could see through the walls way too easily, and the movement was extremely irritating to navigate. I probably played this game for about 15 minutes before I just completely stopped. The second game I found was called Gasp. The description says we are an astronaut on the moon, and we have to meet up with other astronauts that are miles away. It seemed interesting, and I quite enjoy space games, especially when they are done properly. The comments were not so great, even the good reviews joked about how bad the game was. The main comments expressed were how boring the game was and that it was a walking simulator. So I thought to myself, I've never walked on the moon before, and decided to download the game. When I started the game, I was first given the choice to either walk on the moon or walk on Mars. At first, I thought I had to unlock Mars by completing the moon mission, but no, you have to download a $3 DLC for that, and I wasn't going to spend money on this until I knew how it was. So I went to the moon. Before I loaded in, a warning came up saying the game wasn't going to hold your hand and that the whole game was basically in hardcore mode. Once I loaded in, I was jump scared by a loud ass screech and some dialogue.
Hello? Respond.
I began jumping around to test if I had a moon jump, and yes, it definitely has a moon jump. Then I was told I had to find the other astronauts by going to the correct signal.
This is weird. It seems to be showing 5 unknown signals. There must be a glitch in your visor. We're unsure which is the right signal. You're gonna have to choose one and hope for the best.
I was able to choose which one to go to and started making my way towards the lone one on the left side. I didn't pay close attention to the distance because while you're making your way to the signal, asteroids are falling out of the sky trying to kill you. So in this game, you don't have an official HP bar, but instead an oxygen level. If you're hit by an asteroid, your oxygen level will go down, and it slowly decreases over time. So you can go through the whole game without getting hit, but your oxygen level will still go down. I found it a bit odd that oxygen and HP were mixed together as one, but I wish they were separate, but I have seen other games do something similar to this, so I wasn't too worried about it. After walking a fair distance to the signal, I realized that there was an even closer signal and went to that one instead. On my way, nothing really happened. Dodging the asteroids was pretty easy, then you just continued walking. When I finally arrived at the signal, there was this little box on the ground. When I walked up and stood on top of it, my game froze, then the game crashed. I went back into the game and I was going to walk to another signal, but I honestly was extremely bored and stopped playing. So I have a couple of cons in this game that I'm not a big fan of. The first thing I didn't like about this game is that it was pretty boring, and I have to agree with the comments and the reviews that it feels like a walking simulator. Even when dodging the asteroids, there was nothing interesting about doing it. Another thing I didn't like was the camera movement. I don't mind a little bit of sway while walking, but this was way too much. It kind of made me dizzy, and when you're dodging, it makes it difficult to see if the asteroid is coming towards you or if it's going to land somewhere else. Unlike the other game, this game I did have a few things that I liked about it. The graphics and textures are done pretty decently, and the atmosphere was completely there. I felt like I was on the moon, and I feel like that's perfect for this kind of game. Something else I really enjoyed was the voice acting. It wasn't perfect, but it helped to create the atmosphere. The concept for this game could be interesting, but it would need a lot more in order to make it entertaining. That's really it for this one. Let's get into the next game. So the final game was going to be a game called Genesis Online, but I wasn't able to load into it, so I'll be playing Adventure War Battlefield instead. The description states that you can level up and unlock powerful abilities and to help the locals. The kingdom is under attack, and it's our job to help defend it. This game actually had mixed reviews, but a majority of the positive ones were written in early access when compared to the negative ones. Many people complained about the camera and how underwhelming the gameplay was, and I thought the style was really cool when going through the pictures, so I decided to go ahead and download it. When I opened the game, I was messing around within the settings a bit and took a look at the controls. The keys were not too crazy, but interact was set to F instead of E, and the game menu was H instead of escape. You can't change them either, so I found that a bit upsetting. After looking at all that, I hit start to choose my character. It gave me 5 options: a guardian, a warrior, a wizard, a hunter, and a shadow. They each had varying skills and stats, which was pretty normal, and I was going to choose the shadow class because it seemed interesting. I instead went with the hunter because one of the reviews stated it was difficult to aim with the class and wanted to test it for myself. Once I chose my character, a screen popped up telling me that the kingdom was being attacked and to report to the nearest military fortress. So I continued and was put into the fortress to fight. I talked to Knight Captain Ellis and was tasked with defeating 4 enemies. Once in combat, I finally understood what the review meant with aiming. There is no crosshair or indication for where to aim, and it's difficult to line up properly to shoot. You also couldn't look down the gun because right mouse button was for reloading instead of aiming. You don't get hurt in this area, so I didn't have to worry about dying, but it took way too long to kill these 4 guys. Not because of their health, but because it was difficult to line up the shot. Once I took down the 4 enemies, I was then told to take a horse and to report to Captain Merrick. After talking to Captain Merrick, I then had to talk to Knight Philip, and again to Captain Merrick. Then it told me I had to talk to Chief Reuben in another area. Already it seemed there was a lot of back and forth with nothing but talking, but I played a bit longer in hopes that something else will happen. So I traveled to the Arden Woods and was told to take out 10 bandits. When I found the bandits, they just stood there and I could easily shoot them without them really noticing or attacking me. They also respawn after a while and it still counted towards the quest, so I decided to just kill the same person over and over until I completed the quest. Once done, I went back to the chief and was told to talk to Knight Eli. Or Ellie. I don't know. Then I was told to talk to Mercenary Froggen, who was deeper in the woods. So I followed the red arrows, talked to Froggen, and he told me to follow the red banners. I did as he said, killed bandits on my way, and reached a dead end. I looked at my task to see what I was supposed to do, but it just told me that it was already completed. So I ran around for a bit to figure out what I was supposed to do, and figured out I was supposed to report back to Eli. After wasting all of that time, I completely stopped playing. The main issue I have with this game is the combat. Aiming is near impossible and the combat just isn't fun to do at all. Another issue I have is that the camera is a little clunky. When I went to turn corners, sometimes I got turned around and started going backwards. And the final issue I had was the constant back and forth when talking to characters. It reminded me a bit of when I used to play Wizard 101 as a kid, and I actually enjoy Wizard 101 even now as an adult, but that was always something I didn't like about that game. But in Wizard 101, you had other things you could do, and the combat was decently fun for when you got bored. In this, there's nothing else to do but combat, and the combat isn't fun to do. There are a couple things that I do like about this game, starting off with its style. The colors, the art, everything about it is put together really well when it comes to style. Another thing that I really like is the music. The music is pretty peaceful when you're just walking around, and the combat music has a pretty epic sound to it. It fits the theme and it works really well for the areas that you're in. The final thing I like is how simple the game is. This can kind of go into style as well, but the look and feel of the menu is nice. It's also easy and simple to use, and everything is described decently well when you're trying to figure out the abilities. So after playing as the hunter, I decided to play as the shadow to see how melee combat was, and yep, still not fun. Out of all the games, I would say my favorite was Adventure War Battlefield. Even though it had a few things that I didn't like, I feel like it could have great potential, and if certain things were added into the game, it would make it absolutely fun to play. Updating the combat or making the combat a bit more fun and stopping the back and forth between talking with characters would completely change this game and make it so much more fun to play. My second favorite would be Depths of Madness because of how interesting the gameplay actually was. Even though it was a bit awkward and clunky and extremely buggy, I was entertained. There was a story, but sadly I wasn't able to get some of it within the recording. But if I go back into it, I'll try to get some of the recording. And finally, I would have to put Gasp as my least favorite game because honestly, it didn't really feel like a game. You just walked and dodged and hoped that you would choose the right direction, and if you didn't choose correctly, you repeat the process. Walking could take up to 10 minutes. Like, the route that I took was one of the shortest routes, and it took me over 10 minutes to reach that location. And dodging the asteroids was extremely easy, and it didn't take much skill or anything for that matter. There could definitely be a lot that could make the game better, but I would say it would take a lot more effort than the past two games that I did play. That's going to be it for this episode. If you like the look of any of these games and want to try them out for yourself, I'll leave a link to their pages in the description below. Just because I don't find these games enjoyable doesn't mean you will as well, and I completely encourage you to try these games out because you never know if you're going to find a game entertaining. With that being said, leave a like, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you in the next one.